Namaskar, Yogi. Quick warning, this video mentions death, dying, and suicide. Did you know one of the main goals of yoga, one of the main goals of practicing yoga, is to become more comfortable with death and dying? You are working on this comfort, whether you realize it or not, every single time you meditate, you practice breath work, and every single time you practice asana and move through a flow. I wanted to talk about death and dying because we are in what I call the week of the dead. So we've celebrated Halloween, we've celebrated Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, and today is November 2nd, which is known as All Souls Day. You also might know this time as Samhain, whether you're traditionally celebrating Samhain on November 1st, maybe you start to celebrate on October 31st with the Witch's New Year. Maybe you also honor that lunar, solar Samhain portal that's coming up this year a little later than the October 31st, November 1st portal. But wherever you are in the world, whatever you practice, even if you're just having a little fun on Halloween, this is a time when we are honoring more of the death and the dying. It's funny, I actually saw a meme today that said on Halloween, we wear our skeletons as a suit or as a costume, and the other 364 days of the year, our skeleton wears us as a costume. And that's almost true when it comes to the concept of yoga, but it's more like we let our energy be masked and costumed whenever we're out in our day-to-day world, whenever we're moving through this human body and this human skeleton, we are also moving energy and essence and spirit through us all of the time. Now, this is not a talk on religion. This is not a talk on anything to bring you into something secular. This is a talk to maybe help you get to know me a little bit more, learn more about my personal background and journey with yoga, and then also have a little bit of a yogi spiritual talk on death and dying. So people choose yoga for a variety of reasons, and people walk into their first yoga class for a variety of reasons. Whenever I first started yoga, I was looking for something to do on my off day from running. I was running half marathons and marathons on a pretty regular basis, and I was also a certified fitness instructor. So I was lifting weights, I was doing cardio and HIIT fitness, I was teaching kickboxing, I was also Beachbody certified, so I was doing some things like turbo kick and plyo. In fact, I still teach plyo on my membership and occasionally at my studio. But I was doing all of these more hardcore formats on my body, and I was looking for something more low-key, something that was more like a stretch. And I cringe at that now because I know that some people say, isn't that just stretching? I was one of those people too. So I walked into a yoga for runners class at my local gym thinking that I was just going to have an easy off day once a week to kind of stretch and chill out. Now, there were so many other benefits that came along with the practice. From the first time that I stepped into a practice, I noticed that I was dealing with less back pain. That is another story for another video. But I also noticed that my mental health was getting better. I was wanting to make healthier choices for my body. I was getting better sleep. I was finding less stress mentally. I was going through a lot at the time, and I didn't walk into a yoga class for the first time with the intention to heal grief or become more comfortable with death and dying, but that was the major and main benefit that I received once I started going to a yoga class on a regular basis and practicing more yoga myself at home. So let's back up to about a year before I met the world of yoga. Now, I want to say that when I first walked into this yoga class, that wasn't my first experience with yoga. I actually took a whole semester of yoga in college for a PE credit, but to be honest, I do not remember anything from that class. And I wish I had my notes, because I learned from a true Indian guru. He went by Swamiji. I'm sure he provided us so much information, so many golden nuggets, but I did not keep my notes, and it was a different time in my life where I did not care. And so my true experience with yoga was really coming into this yoga class in 2013, when I was looking for something more supplemental to the other things I was already doing for fitness. So in 2012, February of 2012, I did not practice yoga. I was pretty much just running, doing my typical fitness. I was working in the corporate world. I was living a very different life. I lost my father to suicide. It happened very suddenly. It happened very shockingly, and it brought me into a deep state of anxiety and regular panic attacks and deep, deep trauma that I did not know how to heal. In the process of losing my father at that time, I was also in the process of relocating my job with the same company I was already with. They were relocating me to Canada from the United States. So not only was I preparing to move, me and my boyfriend, who is now my husband, we were preparing to move to an entirely different country. And if you know anything about that, you know that that is incredibly complicated. I was also looking to move my job into another country, which is another layer. And on top of that, I end up losing my father during this major transition. So when I moved into Canada and I started to continue with my job, continue with my management position in my corporate retail world, I went through a lot of grief and didn't really know how to deal with it, except to honestly drink a lot of alcohol. I numbed my pain with a lot of alcohol, an unsafe and unhealthy amount of alcohol. And then on top of that, just layering in as much work and dissociation as I could. If I wasn't working myself to the bone, and if I wasn't drinking, I was pounding pavement, way too much mileage from my body and for my health and for the level that I was at, just to basically run away from my problems. I didn't realize that this is what I was doing at the time. It took me practicing yoga to become more aware of that, but that was how I was handling the grief of losing my father, this huge transition into another country, and I didn't know any other way to manage. Well, 6 months later, after moving into Canada, I had to learn how to manage because I lost my job very suddenly, very shockingly, and it left me with a lot of trauma, just in the same way that I had lost my father. And I didn't know where to turn or what to do. And that's how I got into the world of fitness and eventually yoga, because I came to a crossroads in my life where I was in this career path that I had been with this company for about 10 years. I thought I was going to be with that company pretty much until retirement, and I had an opportunity to do something different. I had an opportunity to do something that I enjoyed, and fitness was always something that I enjoyed, so I dove into that world of becoming a certified fitness instructor. And then, teaching fitness at my local gym and just getting into fitness more in my local gym and taking on clients and moving into that world, I started to segue into the introductory yoga world. And that's how I ended up in this space where I was practicing yoga at my local gym weekly. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail about all of it, but one of the main things that I experienced when I first started practicing yoga was a struggle with heart openers, a struggle with back bending. And it wasn't things like wheel or, really intense poses. These were things where we were very gently seated and opening the heart, or we were very gently moving into maybe like a camel pose or a crescent lunge or something of that nature. No matter what it was, when it came to opening the heart, I really struggled with that. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It would make me feel anxious. I would almost feel like I was going to have a panic attack. And many times I wouldn't do the poses, or I would come out of them very quickly. Through the practice of yoga, I started to learn to sit with the discomfort more and more. And again, that's for another video and another time, but this is something that you do practice in the world of yoga. You learn to breathe and get comfortable with the discomforts of the body, with the discomforts of the mind, with the discomforts of your energy and your restlessness and your shortness of breath and all of the other things that can come about that make you feel very limited or weak or make you feel like you're struggling in your postures. And I'm no different than anybody else. I still have postures that I experience that, but heart openers are something that I've learned to work through because our heart is where we hold grief. And I didn't realize this at the time until I started practicing more yoga and learning about the energetics of the body, learning about the emotions of the body, learning where these things show up physically. And when I learned that grief is held in the heart and that I was struggling to open my heart because I was protecting that grief, that's when I learned to open up and find more softness. And I remember I was sitting at home in my personal practice and I was doing a camel pose and I was just sitting there thinking, why is this pose so difficult for my body? Why do I struggle to hold this pose? And so I made myself promise that I was just going to sit and breathe with it and breathe through the discomfort and give myself 10 deep breaths into that discomfort. As long as I didn't feel any pain, as long as I didn't feel like I was dizzy or something was wrong, I was going to breathe into the tension and see what came to mind. You know, yoga is a science experiment with our body. So I'm sitting in this camel pose and I'm breathing and I'm really uncomfortable and I really want to panic and I really want to cry. And then I do cry. And the tears start coming and I continue to hold the camel pose and I'm crying in the camel pose. And it just, the softening comes over me. And for the first time in almost a year, probably longer, I think it had been almost 18 months actually, I felt relief of my grief from losing my father. And I started to understand that everything was just energy and that my father was energy too, and that energy is never created or destroyed, that it always lives on and moves on. And knowing that gave me such peace that I didn't feel that level of grief or that type of grief with my father ever again. And I also want to mention, I want to backtrack that, you know, the more I practiced yoga, the less I wanted to drink. The more I practiced yoga, the less I wanted to pound pavement that maybe wasn't healthy for my body, all the mileage. The more I practiced yoga, the more I became aware of my body and how good it could feel. And how when I was out of the practice, when I was not in that classroom or when I was not in my own practice and on my mat and I was just living my day-to-day life, I could start making more choices that could also make me feel good, like the yoga practice. And so through that, I started to become more aware and more awakened to my emotions and more attuned to what was going on with my feelings in my body. And through that, I started to find that peace and I started to heal that grief. Death is an interesting journey to navigate, and whenever you practice yoga, you learn to become more comfortable with death because you're always going through a cycle of death, life, and rebirth, or life, death, and rebirth, or whatever order you want to look at the cycle. It's all connected, it's all related. And we do this through multiple types of death. You know, death isn't just with your friends and family and loved ones and pets and living beings. Death is also related to the ego, and ego death might be something that you hear a lot in the yoga world because that is another thing that you may experience. Not only do you get more comfortable with death and dying because you just understand more about energy, because you feel energy in your practice, you connect to energy, you feel other people's energy, you feel the energy of the world around you, you feel the energy of nature, you feel the energy of yourself, you know, working in this collaborative, cohesive environment. So once you start to understand this energy, you go into these other layers and concepts of death as well. And, ego death was something that I had to go through in my practice when I moved into the world of yoga. And this is another layer of death and dying that yoga leads you through. When I first started practicing yoga, I was in a world, or I was coming out of a corporate world where I had to be very presentable with my image. I had to have my hair kept up and styled and colored. I had to wear makeup. I had to wear heels almost every day, or something very nice with my shoe. I had to have artificial nails. I basically had to really fit this image of some sort of female character that my management expected me to fit into. And to be honest, I was never comfortable with it. I was never a person that wanted to wear a lot of makeup or have my hair done all the time or be dressed up in this, these professional outfits all the time. That wasn't really my nature, but I was on this career path and it was very secure, and that's where I wanted to be. So when I moved into this world where I didn't have my job anymore and I didn't have to dress that way or be that way, it was a very interesting journey for my identity and my image, and for who I accepted as my authentic self to navigate that in my practice. That was something that started to come up, and yoga helped me to let go of this ego attachment to my image, value and worth connected to this almost fake image that I was having to present myself with every day, or present myself as every day. And I want to just note that there's nothing wrong if you enjoy wearing makeup, if you enjoy having your hair done. I still color my hair and get it done. I still sometimes, make myself look a different way and just get dressed up, and that can be fun and that can be enjoyable. But part of this costume that I was wearing was a way to hide my authentic self, because I didn't feel pretty underneath in my natural skin. I didn't feel acceptable or worthy in my natural hair and body. Even tanning was something that I let go of as I started to move into yoga. I stopped tanning on a regular basis because I got comfortable with having a paler skin. My goodness sake, I lived in Canada. Did it really matter? So you let go of an ego death with yoga as well. And, there were deeper ego deaths that I went through as well. I went through this death of this version of myself that was holding myself back from being successful or being able to put myself out into the world. When I went to my yoga teacher training in 2015, I remember doing this meditation on peace and forgiveness. And at the time, a lot of anger towards my mother came up. My mother was abusive to me. We don't have a relationship, even though she's still alive at the time of this video. We had a really hard time with each other growing up, and I moved out when I was 14, and I had harnessed a lot of anger over the years towards her and towards how she had treated me and towards all the trauma that she had programmed into me and into my psyche and into my mental health. And I remember sitting there in this meditation at my yoga teacher training and just letting go of that. Just letting go of that victim mentality that I was holding on to, letting go of that anger towards her, forgiving her, holding space for her. Not that it was okay for how she treated me, but just not attaching to that and not letting that rule over me anymore. I remember also in my yoga teacher training letting go of this version of myself, letting this version of myself die that was afraid of community. I had had experiences in my past and in my childhood where I had been kind of bullied, or I had been outed from certain groups or friendships very suddenly, very shockingly. I've sort of had to experience this death throughout my life in a very shocking, setting way on multiple layers. And I learned to become comfortable with that and okay with that with the help of yoga, and learn to embrace community no matter what happens in the future, and no matter what has happened in the past. And I also learned to let go of limitations around my success. Coming out of yoga teacher training, thinking about becoming a yoga teacher full-time is a very scary thing. Dropping my career in other ways, or thinking about other ways to make money, and just thinking that I can do it here doing this, which I do now. But in 2015, which was, 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago at the time of this filming, I was a little scared because, I had lost a job previously that I thought was my career path for good. Even I had graduated in a recession. I graduated in 2007 from college, and the degree I graduated with, I didn't use in an expected way. I have a biochemistry degree, and I didn't move forward with that in the way I thought, although now I have definitely applied that in different ways and still do. But these losses in my professional paths, in my professional pursuits, they had programmed me to think that maybe I was never meant for success, that I would never be successful. And that was a version of myself that I had to let die, and was able to let die as I practiced yoga. So yoga can help you with multiple ways of accepting death and dying, whether you need to, just let go of a version of yourself that's holding on to something that doesn't serve, or maybe when you've actually gone through a death with somebody, or, even yourself, and we'll talk about that. It provides a comfort. This practice provides a comfort to you that I don't think that you experience in a lot of other situations or a lot of other practices that you can do. Another reason that I wanted to bring up this topic of death and dying right now is because honestly, this week, every single day, I have had a client come to me with a story about death and dying, whether they have known somebody that has recently died or been killed, one or the other. There have been some deaths that people have experienced personally or with somebody that they know. And this is a time when death is brought to the table more comfortably, again, because we are in this, kind of week of the dead where it's very obvious, or we're celebrating our ancestors, we're celebrating the dead. And it's just interesting because it's also a time when the veil is thin. If you believe in the astrology world, in the energetic world, it's supposed to be a time when the veil is the thinnest, and we're connected to those on the other side. We're connected to essence, we're connected to spirit, whether you believe that or not. But having these personal encounters every single day this week with people I know, people I care about, clients, students, acquaintances that are going through the journey of grief with death and dying, I wanted to just bring a little bit of a yogi philosophy to the table with this concept. Every single time that we get onto our mat, whether it's for just meditation or whether it's for actual asana and movement, we are going through the life cycle of life, death, rebirth. And, think about it. When you come into your meditation, you start by coming in and finding stillness, whether you're seated or lying down, whatever position you're in. You work to find stillness. You go into the darkness. You go into the womb. You go into the internal self. And then as you are navigating all of these thoughts, all of these emotions, these memories, these experiences, these flashes that come up in your mind as you're working on cultivating stillness. This is life, your programming, your thoughts, your experiences, your memories. All of this is coming up in the mind, your life. And then you work to release it all. You work to clear the mind, or you acknowledge the thought and you give it, reverence or breath or power for just a moment in case it is relevant, and then you let it go. You let it die. You let the attachment to it die. You let its ability to have life and take over your attention die. So you go through that death process. And then what do you do when you're done with your meditation? You take deep breaths in. You move your body again. Maybe you stretch, you move around, you go about your day. You move through rebirth. The same concept happens when you do asana. You start in stillness. Maybe you're in a child's pose. Maybe you're seated meditation, you're sukhasana. Maybe you're in Tadasana, mountain pose. Whatever it is, it's stillness. You start your practice in stillness. Again, much like the womb, the darkness, preparing for the life of your practice, preparing to give it more energy, more breath, more flow. And then you move through that flow. And you're constantly holding stillness and contracting the muscles and releasing the muscles. And as you're doing this, all of these things are coming up in the mind. And this is life. Again, you're cultivating the stillness throughout the life as well. You're cultivating peace throughout the life. You know, when you contract and release your physical body, and you're trying to release all of that tension, you are learning to cultivate more peace with your physical body. When these distracting thoughts come up and the negative self-talk and the programming and the memories and the emotions and all of that, you are learning to cultivate more peace with your mental body, with your mental health. You're learning to cultivate more peace with your energetic body. You know, when you're restless in the stillness of your poses and you want to move on to the next, or you're restless in your mind and you're thinking about other things because you're tired of being in this pose, when you learn to find stillness with all of that, you are cultivating more peace overall. And throughout this whole process, again, you come back to what at the end of your practice? Shavasana. Corpse pose. You learn to find stillness again. You let it all die for good. If you couldn't let it go throughout the asana, throughout the holding, the contracting, the releasing, the breathing, you come into more stillness and you just lie down and you let the earth take it as much as you can. And this is the death experience. And then what do when you're done with your Shavasana? You breathe, you come back and move your body, you stretch, maybe you come up and meditate. This is the rebirth. You are always a different version of yourself after your practice, after your meditation. You're not the same as you were before because you've let that version of yourself die. And this is how we get comfortable with death and dying in our yoga practice every single time that we show up. When we learn to become more fluid with this contraction and this release, when we learn to become more fluid with our thoughts coming into our mind and just floating by, when we learn to let these emotions and these memories and these deep wounds and traumas rise up and then move on with love, we move into a more fluid state overall. And you know this from yoga, whether you practice yourself or whether you know somebody that practices yoga, you know that people that practice yoga tend to be very fluid, very go with the flow. And when you are very go with the flow with life, you are also very go with the flow in death. It is all connected. This is yoga. This is the yoking. This is the alignment and attunement of the cycle of nature. I hope that this yoga talk has served you today, and I hope that it has provided you more of an understanding around the concept of death and dying in the yoga world. As I said before, I have my little friend here, my skeleton friend. This was something that was gifted to me last year by a good friend of mine. And I don't know if you can see it, but there are these little black butterflies all over the skeleton, and they're all glittery, and the skeleton is smiling. And of course, he's meditating, he's at peace. And I keep this on the shelf here at the yoga studio year round. This isn't just Halloween decoration. This is here on the shelf year round to remind us of the beauty of death, to remind us of the peace that we can have in death when we really learn to practice that letting go on a regular basis. So we don't say corpse pose a lot in yoga, at least I don't, because again, words have a lot of power and the word corpse can feel very scary or very uncomfortable for people. But just know that when you are practicing Shavasana, when you're practicing final relaxation, you are practicing corpse pose. So with that, I want to practice corpse pose. I want us to embrace the corpse, to embrace the concept of the corpse, to embrace a true Shavasana. Now that you know a little bit more about this purpose of yoga, to cultivate more peace and to cultivate more peace in the letting go of our body and our breath and our mind and our energy fully when it is time for us to cross over into the other dimension, into the other plane of existence, whatever that is for our energy, essence, and spirit. We are going to practice corpse pose now and start to cultivate more comfort with that concept of death and dying. So I'm going to invite you now into a comfortable position lying down. So that may be on your back, that may be on your side. Of course, if you need pillows or blankets or just anything to make yourself more comfortable, please do so. I am going to lie down with you, and I have a bolster here. And for those that, may struggle to find comfort lying down on their back or on their side, a pillow or a bolster is a great yoga prop to bring into your Shavasana practice. Remember that we want to find as much peace as possible as we're doing this practice. So we want to find comfort. And a lot of people like to have either a pillow or blanket in between their knees lying on their side or underneath their legs when they're lying on their back. I personally have had a little bit of tension in my low back. I'm hoping to let that version and layer of me die throughout this practice right now. So I'm going to make myself comfortable to release that tension, to already program my mind that I am not that version of myself, because with the right positioning, with the right yoga props, I can find comfort. I can find relaxation. And right now there is absolutely no pinching in my low back and no discomfort. So I know that there are multiple versions of myself existing at the same time, and I can choose which one I want to let die right now and which one I want to let grow and come forward. So as you are finding your comfort, find a relaxed body. You might even want to pick up your shoulders, set them back down. You might want to bring your palms forward, up, and relaxing with your shoulders forward. You might want to take a moment to even pick up your head, stretch out your neck, roll it around. Same with the lower body, just moving into a space where you can find more stillness. And as you find this stillness, begin to close your eyes. As you close your eyes and relax, I'll begin to lower the lights and invite in more darkness into our practice. If you do not have this darkness at home, that is okay. If you are able to adjust to a darker setting and you want to do that now, go ahead. I apologize for not inviting that in before, but I do invite it in now. You might not see much on the video, but your eyes should be closed once you find your relaxed Shavasana. Begin to embrace the concept of the corpse as you relax deeper. Feel your breath moving out of your body. Feel your exhales getting longer and deeper than your inhales. When we are born, we take our first breath in. When we die, we release our last breath out. Embrace the concept of the corpse now as you practice corpse pose. Breathe deeply with your exhales, like gentle sighs of relief and release, feeling peace wash over you with each breath out. Embrace the heaviness of the corpse, bones sinking into the earth, body becoming one with the earth. The corpse has nowhere to be. Let go of the need to move your body. The corpse has nothing to do. Let go of the need now to control your breath. The corpse has nothing to think about. Let go of the thoughts that your mind wants to think. You are not your body. You are not even your mind. You are energy, essence, spirit, living on, always growing, changing, evolving, always recycling, transferring, always changing. Connect to the essence of yourself now. The deepest, truest part of yourself. Coming back to the concept of the corpse. The corpse does not have any physical attachment. The corpse does not possess anything material. The corpse no longer has relationships, obligations, and commitments. The corpse has no use for its body anymore. The body can relax. The corpse has no use for its mind anymore. The brain and mind can relax. The corpse has no use for the breath anymore. Do not worry about your breath. Simply let your breath flow as it wants to flow. The corpse does not have any identity anymore. The corpse does not have labels. The corpse does not have its ego. The corpse has no need to wear a mask, a costume, a version of themselves that they feel may be more acceptable to the world. The corpse does not worry about such things. The corpse simply exists and allows itself to be. Continue to embrace the concept of the corpse. Become like the corpse, soft and open, relaxed and letting go. We are constantly dying and living at the same time. Our cells are constantly dying, and we are constantly growing new cells. Thoughts that come to our mind are constantly dying and leaving us, and new thoughts are coming into our mind. Certain energies that we've collected that are not of us are dying, being released to be recycled and transferred, and new energies are coming along and filling the spaces that we open. Let the version of yourself that no longer serves die now. Metaphorically letting go of the cells that may be at dis-ease or discomfort. Letting go of the wounds, traumas, and programming that limit you or hold you back. Imagine yourself like a blank disc now being wiped clean, and you get the opportunity to write the code for your life now, to rewrite the programming, to design a new avatar and more authentic version of yourself. Begin to breathe into this new version of yourself now that you are welcoming in, that you are becoming. Start to become more attuned to this new version of yourself that has evolved, improved, and grown in a positive way. Slowly invite more life into this version of yourself by breathing deeply, really enhancing your inhale now, bringing in more prana. Begin to activate this new version of yourself by gently moving your hands, fingers, feet, toes, ankles, wrists, shoulders, arms, legs. But check in with this new body. Notice how it feels. Notice maybe how it's different from before. After you've completely let go, after you've completely relaxed. And when you're ready, take a deep breath in. On your exhale, start bringing your knees towards your chest. Give yourself a little squeeze or hug if you can. Open up your spine. Open up the energy highway for your 7 main chakras. Open up this new version of yourself. And when you're ready, roll to the side of your choice. Stay in the fetal position on your side. Invite in more breath here. Imagine yourself like the fetus in the womb. This new version of yourself preparing to be reborn now. And as you take another deep breath into this new version of yourself, slowly press up to a comfortable seat. You are still in the darkness with eyes closed. As you find your comfortable seat, realign your posture. Find the stacking and alignment of your spine. Begin to align your bones so your muscles can stay soft and relaxed. Begin to breathe into this new body that you are now discovering. Again, notice how it is different. Notice what has changed. Notice not only your physical body, but also your energetic body. Notice if you feel restless or calm. Notice your mind. Notice your thoughts, if there are even any thoughts at all. Notice your emotions. Notice how you feel. Just notice this new version of yourself that you have created. When you are ready, bring your hands together at your heart space. Lift your heart towards your head. Bow your head towards your heart. Seal in a gesture of gratitude, showing thanks for this new body, showing thanks for your breath and the life force energy it gives you, showing thanks for the exhales and their ability to help you cultivate more ease with release and letting go. Show gratitude for this practice By finding more stillness, you find more peace. By finding more peace, you find more fluidity. By finding more fluidity, you find more ease in the death and dying that is the true letting go. Be grateful for the comfort you're cultivating around the journey of death and dying. Be grateful for the opportunity to practice rest and release. Continue to hold gratitude for anything else that you are grateful for. Breathing into it now. We will seal this practice with 3 cleansing breaths. When you are ready, with eyes closed, inhale, sweep your arms up and overhead. Join your palms together at the top. Exhale, pull your hands to your heart. Let's do that 2 more times. Nice open mouth exhales. Inhale. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May we all be happy. May we all be healthy. May we all be free of disease. May we all feel safe and at peace. May we all feel loved, be loved, and love one another. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. Blessed be. Namaste. I hope this practice has served you. I hope you're feeling at more peace. I hope that you're noticing this new version of yourself that you've created in a very short amount of time. I certainly feel different. You can even probably hear it in my voice or see it in how relaxed I look, and hopefully you're feeling something of the same. If you are working to find comfort with the concept of death and dying, I do invite you to practice more stillness in your yoga practice and practice longer savasanas, longer corpse poses. A lot of times this is a pose that isn't honored enough, and many of us are also very uncomfortable with death and dying. And maybe this whole talk today on death and dying and its relationship with yoga made you feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. I was once a person that was very uncomfortable with death and dying and all of those things as well. And yoga is the thing that helped me find more peace with all of that. And so I encourage you to keep practicing. I invite you to think about this concept of the corpse as you're practicing corpse pose, really what that means. Invite in the concepts of death and the multiple layers of death and what that can mean as well. It is a very complicated thing to think about, but yoga is a journey of not just science and the self, it's also a process of philosophy. It's a journey of philosophy, and there's a whole facet of yoga that is all about just contemplation and philosophy. So when we sit here and we think about, who we are and what is our essence and what is spirit, what happens to us when we die, and all of these things, we are also practicing yoga. So as you continue to navigate these concepts of death and dying, I send you love, I send you peace, and may you continue to have a most positive healing journey on your way. Namaste.